Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sports Stories channel. I'm your host Sage McSwain, and for today I'm going to be doing my NFL playoff predictions for this season. So we have a pretty stacked playoffs here, which some unexpected teams did end up coming through. Texans and Browns on the AFC side. Steelers are a little bit surprising, even though what did they make it last year or the year before that? So they're a little bit surprising. I think we expected the AFC North to not be as competitive, or at least the Bengals to take their spot. Obviously, with Joe Burrow getting injured, that did change things a lot. And then as for the NFC side, the Lions winning the division, not anything that nobody really saw coming, but some people thought the Vikings would win it. The Rams being back in, I think a lot of people saw that. The Rams were a little bit of a sleeper team going in just because of how bad they were the previous season, but Cooper Kupp was out, Aaron Donald was out for an extended amount of time, Matthew Stafford was out for an extended amount of time. The Buccaneers winning the AFC or the NFC South is pretty big. The Eagles here are the 5th seed. Pretty interesting. I think most people saw them as a possible 2 seed, but the Cowboys also getting that 2 seed in there. So it's pretty competitive, and it's gonna be interesting to see what the playoffs really are played out, and how they do end up. But as for me, I'm just gonna be going off of my ball knowledge, which is either really correct or really wrong. So it's gonna be kind of tough to see where it really ends up, because it's not really the best. I don't really have the greatest ball knowledge, but when I'm right, I'm fully correct. And when I'm wrong, it's by a pretty wide margin. And obviously, I don't know if you can see it on your screen. Yes, you can. That is Spotify. But yeah, you can see that I'm using playoff predictors. So if you guys want to make your own, I highly recommend using them. This is just a great website to use an interactive bracket. But anyway, let's get right into my playoff predictions. Now we'll start over in the AFC with the first game of the wild card round. We have the Texans we got the Texans at home going against the 5-seeded Browns. Now the Texans have a pretty good offense. They're the 10th best offense in total yards per game, with 366 yards per game. They are a top 10 passing offense in the league, with about 246 yards per game, and they are a top 10 rushing defense in the league, with only allowing under 100 yards per game. So they're a really good rushing defense, and they're going head to head against a Browns rushing offense that's spearheaded by Jerome Ford, who has mainly taken the main load of that rushing offense due to Nick Chubb being injured. So it's going to be interesting to see how a player like Will Anderson Jr., a possible defensive rookie of the year candidate, can go up against a Browns offensive line and a Browns rushing offense that is pretty middle of the pack in the league, but I wouldn't say that's necessarily bad. They're 5th best. They're the 5th best defense in the league on third down conversion percentage, so not a lot of people are able to really convert third downs against them, and their defense has been doing pretty well at getting some stops, which we saw in the Colts AFC South Championship game, basically, where the Texans went into Indianapolis and won a must-win game, a close one at that, but the Texans came out with the win. But a couple gripes that I have with the Texans is that they don't have the greatest rushing offense, being 22nd in the league, averaging under 100 rushing yards at 97 yards per game, and they have one of the worst passing defenses in the league, at being ranked 23rd, averaging or allowing an average of 234 yards. Averaging 234 yards against them. So Joe Flacco's been able to dice up some people, especially him and Amari Cooper together. So that's going to be kind of tough for the Texans to kind of guard there. And the Texans are going against one of the best defenses, which I'll go ahead and get right into it. The Browns are 1st in total yards allowed, passing yards allowed, and third down conversion percentage. So this Browns defense is pretty locked down. They are top 10 in points scored per game. But the negative side for the Browns is that they are a bottom five team in offensive third down conversion percentage. So they're not really able to extend drives, apart from, some pretty big plays. If you're kind of getting them in a third and mid to third and long situation, which, if they're able to lock up the run game for the Browns, that is a possibility. So if the Texans are able to limit the Browns and make them really try and go for it on third down, I feel like the Texans could definitely use that to their advantage. If the Texans are able to shut down the Browns' rushing offense, I think it'll help them. But for the Browns, what they need to do against the Texans in order to win this game, they would probably need to, I think easily first, they would be able to limit the rushing offense. The Texans' rushing offense isn't that good, but the Browns' rushing defense is pretty middle of the pack. So if the Texans are able to win the line of scrimmage, they could probably win. But if the Browns are able to dominate the line of scrimmage, especially on the defensive side of the ball, I think they'll be able to beat the Texans in that regard. Obviously, the Browns are really good in passing defense, which the Texans are really good at. C.J. Stroud has been a great player, again, a possible Offensive Rookie of the Year candidate, and many people said that he's playing at an MVP caliber this season. So I think a lot of people, think that the Texans have a really good passing offense, and if the Browns also have a really good passing defense, it's going to be interesting to see how they are able to counteract, the explosiveness of a connection between C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins that, we saw on clear display against the Colts last week. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Browns can do. But as for this game, I'm going to go ahead and have the Texans here at home. I know that's a little bit of a shocker. I believe the Browns are favored in this game by about 3.5 points at the time of recording. And the Browns are going to be going into Houston. But I think if the Texans are able to really launch that ball downfield, kind of also eat away, maybe possibly make a run game for them to open up a play action type of offense, I think that'd be really great. Where I can see the Browns winning this game is if they're able to completely eliminate the passing offense of the Texans, win the line of scrimmage, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and just let Joe Flacco cook. Okay, they're really good in scoring. They're really able to score points. It's just, can they get the third down conversions up? And so if the Texans are able to force the Browns to run the ball, and if they're able to force the Browns into third and long situations, I think the Texans could win here, which is something that I can really see the Texans doing. But as for the next game, we're going to have the Dolphins going over to Kansas City. Now, this game was played previously in the season. This one was in Frankfurt, Germany. It was a neutral site. I believe it was listed as a Chiefs home game, but it was a neutral site nonetheless. And the Chiefs won by 7, 21-14 in a pretty good offensive shootout. And the defense did really well too in that game on both teams. I think just a critical fumble, I believe by Tyreek Hill, was returned for a touchdown. And that's why the Chiefs were really able to win the game. They started off with a 21-0 lead, so it's going to be interesting. But again, the Chiefs, nothing new, really. We saw them being here in the playoffs. Maybe not as the third seed, but we all definitely saw them being in the playoffs. They've been in quite the slump here near the end of the season, but they are, again, they're still a top 10 passing offense in the league, led by Patrick Mahomes. They're top 10 in offensive third down conversion percentage. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they're the third best defense in total yards allowed, top 5 in passing yards allowed, top 3 in points allowed per game, and they're tied for 10th in the league for defensive third down conversion percentage. So, overall, this team is really good. This is just, a regular classic Chiefs team, which, has been surprisingly, in a slump from the looks of it, losing some games against some pretty mediocre teams. But again, they have played the Dolphins before this season, and they were able to win at a neutral site and Arrowhead Stadium is one of the loudest stadiums, and I'm sure we're probably going to be able to see Taylor Swift like 10 times during the game. But I think, going into Arrowhead is a pretty big stadium to play a playoff game in. It does get really loud. So I think, the Chiefs do have a little bit of an advantage there with it being at home. Now, as for the Dolphins, they have a really great offense. They're first in the league at total yards and passing yards per game. They're a top 10 rushing offense, and they are top 3 in points scored per game. And they're top 10 in offensive third down conversion percentage. Now, whereas on defense, they are top 10 in rushing defense, mainly led by Christian Wilkins, who's been really great for them. But they are bottom of the league in points allowed per game and bottom of the league in defensive third down conversion. So, which is something that's kind of bad because you're going up against a Chiefs team that is able to put up a lot of yards, and they're also really able to convert on third down. And the Miami Dolphins defense hasn't really done too well, converting on third down. Obviously, the Dolphins had, kind of the hardest last 2 weeks in the schedule, or last few weeks in the schedule. They played against the Ravens, who are the number 1 seed, and then they played against the Bills for that AFC East title, for that 2nd seed. So they definitely did have a pretty bad schedule, but again, going into the playoffs, you're going pretty low morale after losing a pretty big game against the Bills. I just don't see the Dolphins really pulling this one out. Jalen Ramsey just didn't look good against Stephon Diggs. Now, the Chiefs don't have a wide receiver to the caliber of Stephon Diggs, but they do have Travis Kelce, and I think that the Chiefs offense will definitely be able to overpower this Dolphins defense and beat them at home against the Dolphins. I think this one is not going to be as clear cut as I want to make it sound, but I think the Chiefs will be able to win a really competitive game against the Dolphins and that explosive offense of the Dolphins. But the thing that worries me is really just the defense of the Dolphins, and they're just not really that competitive, so I got to give it to the Chiefs here. Now, as for the next game, I'm going to do the Bills at home going against the Steelers. Now, the Bills, obviously, they're just a great team. They're top 10 in total yards per game, passing yards per game, rushing yards per game, and points scored per game. And they're the best in the league at offensive third down conversion, with almost 50% third down conversion percentage. So that's absolutely great. And then defensively, they're top 10 in total yards allowed and passing yards allowed per game, and they are top 5 in points allowed per game. So this defense and offense doesn't really mess around. Now, the one gripe I would have with the Bills is Josh Allen's playmaking ability. Now, going up against a defense such as the Steelers, I wouldn't worry too much. They have some really great defensive backs that are able to catch, and they're able to get those interceptions, which has been somewhat of a kryptonite for Josh Allen this past season. But with his playmaking decisions and where he's placing the ball. But the Steelers are going to be playing without TJ Watt, so obviously there's not going to be much pressure put on Josh Allen with TJ Watt not being there, and so you're not going to really force him into some bad playmaking decisions. Where some teams have, they put the pressure on him and then he, chucks some things up that aren't really, like in double coverage or something like that. So I think the Bills, they have just such a really well-rounded team that I don't really see them being a first-round exit. But let's break down the Steelers here. I know it seems pretty clear-cut that the Bills are probably going to win this one at home against the Steelers. Bills Mafia is really loud, so that home court advantage is definitely, or that home field advantage, I should say, is definitely going to be pretty big for the Bills, and really hard for the Steelers to win out. But the Steelers, let's just break them down, and you'll see why I think it's such a clear-cut decision that the Bills most likely are going to win this one. I'm just going to put them through here. But the Steelers are bottom of the league. They're a bottom of the league offense, really, in total yards per game, passing yards, points scored, and third down conversion percentage. I mean, it's pretty bad there on offense. And then on defense, they're bottom of the league in total yards allowed per game and defensive third down conversion percentage. The only great thing I can say about the Steelers is that they're a top 10 defense in points allowed per game, with only allowing around 19 points per game. But again, I think that's mainly due to the prowess of TJ Watt, and he did get injured last week. So I don't have too much faith in him, or too much faith in the Steelers with his absence. So I think it's pretty easy to say that the Bills should be put in through here. But again, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Josh Allen does play. But I think, again, with TJ Watt being out for the Steelers, it's kind of a clear-cut decision that the Bills most likely are going to win. And I believe they have the biggest spread at a 10-point favorite here in the playoffs for this first round. They had the biggest spread, I think. But going on to the second biggest spread in the playoffs, we have the Cowboys and Packers, which I still believe is the second biggest spread of this wild card round, with the Cowboys being favored by 7 points, I want to say. I would have to double check. Yeah, because the Eagles are only favored by 3 points in Tampa Bay. So, Cowboys have the second biggest spread at -7, which is, at the time of recording, obviously, odds do change. Or actually, sorry, it's at 7.5 now. Now that I double checked, it's at 7.5. But I mean, this Cowboys team is really good. They're top 5 in total yards per game. They're third in passing yards per game. They're the best team in points scored per game. They're a top 3 in offensive third down conversion percentage. They're top 10 in total yards allowed. They're the 5th best defense in the league in passing yards allowed and points allowed per game. So this defense and offense are really good. And obviously that was shown on full display. They won the NFC East, which isn't as competitive, but I mean, going against the Eagles, I mean, it's really as competitive as you can get for that top seed. Sure, they did show some signs of failure, mainly through that rushing offense. It's pretty middle of the pack, nothing too spectacular. So if you're definitely able to break down the passing offense of the Cowboys, you could, if you make it more one-dimensional for them to run the ball, I think you could definitely beat the Cowboys in that regard. And looking at the Packers, that's something that they have. They are, they're top 10 in passing yards allowed, with only allowing about 207 yards per game. And their defense is one of the bright spots for the Packers. I mean, they're 10th in points allowed per game, and they are a pretty good defense, through with that secondary. But at the line of scrimmage is where you kind of start to see something a little bit off about this team. They're a bottom 5 rushing defense, ranking 28th in the league, allowing around 128 yards per game, and they're a bottom 10 defense in third down conversion percentage, allowing 41.1% of third downs through. Now for their offense, nothing much to say. They're pretty middle of the pack. I mean, they're the 5th best offense in third down conversion percentage. But again, that Cowboys defense is really good. So I don't know really if the Packers will be able to shut down that passing offense. And even if they are able to, the Packers rush defense hasn't been the best. So I don't know if they'd be able to stop Tony Pollard. So for that fact, I'm going to have to put the Cowboys through here, just for that. But I think it'll definitely be closer than most people think. I think that -7.5 is a pretty big spread for what this game could be. I mean, Mike McCarthy, is coaching for the Cowboys now, former coach for the Packers, obviously. So it's definitely going to be a pretty big game, but I'd say Cowboys at home here against the Packers definitely is my choice. But to say that it's going to be a -7.5 spread, I think is a little bit too much. I think I would probably go under that, but I think it'll be really close. But give me the Packers there. Now we have the Lions in their first playoff appearance since 2016. Where they had the Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford still on their team, and this was their first division championship since 1993, I want to say, which is kind of a disgrace because I'm a Lions fan, so if I mess that up. I know for a fact they made it to the divisional round in 1991, but I'm pretty sure the last championship they had was the NFC Central in 1993. So it's been more than 30 years, and they finally have gotten to the playoffs. It's been a tough struggle for all Lions fans like myself. It's been a struggle, and I'm a little scared to go against the Rams. Not gonna lie. If Matthew Stafford really cared about the city of Detroit, he would really just lose this game. In my opinion, he would just choke this game. He would be really bad that they would have to start Carson Wentz in the second half. Like that, I need him to be that bad, so they start Carson Wentz because, Matthew Stafford is heralded in Detroit. Sure, he didn't really do much for the Lions when he was here, but he made the Lions watchable, and he's greatly appreciated in the city of Detroit. But if the Rams beat the Lions here, I think Matthew Stafford's appreciation in Detroit will definitely go to zero. Okay, he will be probably one of the most hated men in Detroit. But moving on from that sidebar conversation, let's go into the Lions, the home team here. They are the third best offense in total yards per game, top 3 in passing yards per game, and the 5th best offense in the league at rushing yards and points scored per game. So this is an electric offense. They're tied for 10th in third down conversion percentage. This offense is really fun to watch. However, as a Lions fan, you kind of get to the nitty gritty and look at that defense. It's kind of a heap of garbage, not gonna lie. Okay, they're bottom of the league in total yards allowed per game, passing yards allowed per game, and points allowed per game. They allow 357 yards per game. They just allow quarterbacks to just throw on them 247 yards per game, and they allow around 23 points per game. Whereas the offense scores around 27. So obviously that margin is pretty good, but a 4-point margin isn't really the greatest there. But they are one of the best rushing defenses in the league, allowing only around 89 rushing yards per game. And they are tied for 10th in best third down conversion percentage, only allowing 37.1% of third downs converted. Now looking at the Rams here, great offense. They're top 10 in total yards at 373, and they are also top 10 in points scored per game. It's 24 points, and they are top 10 in offensive third down conversion percentage at 42. And they're 10th in the league in passing yards per game. But whereas the defense is pretty middle of the pack, they're bottom of the league in passing yards allowed, with allowing about 231 yards per game. So, the Rams are a great offense. The Lions are a great offense. I'm going to assume that this one, if you're a betting man, you probably would want to go on the over for total points scored, because this is or if you're a betting person, I should say, we believe in gender fluidity here, but if you're a betting person, go on the over for the Lions and Rams. They're two pretty bad defenses, and going up against two pretty good offenses. This game is going to be an absolute shootout in Detroit. I'm betting on it for sure. Jared Goff, he's able to sing it through the air. Anytime he throws a little bit deep, I get a little bit scared. His accuracy is a little bit off sometimes. Obviously, the Lions will be playing this one without Sam Laporta, who has a knee contusion of some sort, and also has some bone bruising. So there is a possible chance that he comes back, but it's a far shot, as Dan Campbell said in a press conference earlier this week. So it's going to be a far shot for him to play, but I do believe that if they do make it to the second round, they will have him. It's going to be interesting. Obviously, the Rams are one of the greatest passing offenses in the league, and they're going against one of the worst passing defenses in the league. Puka Nakua and Cooper Kupp have been really great receivers for Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford is able to throw dimes like it's nothing. That Lions offense is really good. They're going up against a bad passing defense. They're going to be able to sling the rock, but will Sam Laporta's absence be too much for the Lions to go without? And that's something that, unfortunately, as a Lions fan, I'd say will definitely hurt them. And I'm probably going to have to get this one to them. As much as it hurts to say that the Lions are a first-round exit team, let's be honest, Lions fans, okay? What real teams have they beat other than the Cowboys, right? I'm giving them the win over the Cowboys, right? That was just solely officiating. They would have won that game 21-20, I believe. They would have won that game. They went up against the Ravens, absolutely blown out. They beat a banged up Chiefs team that didn't have Chris Jones or Travis Kelce. Sure, they still had Patrick Mahomes, but you're only able to beat them by 1 point. You're able to beat the Cowboys by 1 point, if officiating didn't do it. You split the series with the Packers. You beat the Buccaneers, but I mean, it's the Buccaneers. So, I just don't believe in this Lions defense to really stay in the game against the Rams. I think if Matthew Stafford is able to really keep a consistent 2-score lead, maybe, I don't think the Lions can really get back in the game. So, unfortunately, as a Lions fan, as much as it hurts, I'm going to have the Rams getting through there, and Matthew Stafford will become one of the most hated men in Detroit history. I'm sure of it. But let's move on to the last game of the wild card round. We have the Eagles at the Buccaneers. Now, let's go into the home team. The Buccaneers, terrible. This is one of the worst offensive stats that I've seen. Breaking both teams down for all the games. They're bottom of the league in total yards per game and points scored per game. They are the worst rushing defense or rushing offense in the league. But they are tied for 10th best in third down conversion percentage, converting on 41.5% of their third down plays. Defensively, they're bottom of the league in total yards allowed and passing yards allowed and third down conversion percentage. But they are one of the best rushing defenses in the league. Allowing a little under 100 yards per game. And then they are top 10 in points allowed per game. So, I mean, they seem to give up a lot of yards, just not a lot of points. So I think they're able to make more goal line stands for the Buccaneers, which is, definitely something that the Eagles are good at getting and converting in the red zone. But, unfortunately, they are 1-4 in their last 5. And they played their starters against the Giants, and they still didn't win, which is a little bit worrisome if I'm an Eagles fan here. I mean, they're top 10 in total yards, top 10 in rushing yards, points scored per game. They're third best offense in third down conversion percentage. But looking at that defense is what's really hurting the Eagles so far. They're bottom of the league in total yards allowed, or they're one of the bottom teams in the league at total yards allowed. They are bottom of the league in passing yards. I mean, they're 31st there, passing yards allowed. They're 30th in points allowed per game, and they allow a lot. They're 31st on third down conversion percentage at allowing 46.4% of plays to convert on third down. But they are the 10th best rushing defense in the league. Now, the Buccaneers offense, I think this is definitely going to be a defensive stalemate. But as much as it seems a little bit crazy to do, I'm gonna have the Buccaneers at home. I know that's a wild take, but it's Buccaneers at home, and I believe in this Buccaneers defense to really pull out a win here, to keep the Buccaneers in it. I think the Buccaneers defense will definitely keep them in there. I mean, the Eagles have a great offense, but that Buccaneers defense is really good, especially on that run game. And if they're able to shut down the run game for the Eagles and force them to go through the air, maybe I think you could pressure Jalen Hurts into making some rash decisions and sending that ball out there. So I'm gonna have the Buccaneers there in an upset at home against the Eagles. Now let's go into this next round. Let's go through the NFC here. 49ers at home against the Rams, who would hypothetically beat the Lions, unfortunately. Um, the 49ers are one of the greatest teams in the league right now. They're top 3 in total yards per game. They're the 3rd best offense in the league in rushing yards and points scored per game. They're a top 5 offense in passing yards and third down conversion percentage. Defensively, they're top 10 in total yards allowed per game. They're the 3rd best defense in rushing yards allowed and points scored per game. But where they do falter a little bit is that they are near the bottom of the league in third down conversion percentage, tied for 23rd with allowing about 40.9% of third down plays to go through. So that is one major downfall of the 49ers. It's just that one part about that defense. But they are going against the Rams. So the Rams haven't been able to beat the 49ers in, 5 years. They were just able to beat them with the last game of the season, but the 49ers didn't play their starters. And the Rams only beat them by 1. But again, the Rams also didn't really play their starters for most of the game. They just had Puka in because Puka needed to beat the rookie receiving yards record, I believe. But the Niners are just a great team. They're really a great team. Allowing only 17.5 points per game is pretty wild, in my opinion. The Rams are able to score, but are they really able? Is that defense really able to contain Debo, Christian McCaffrey, Brock Purdy? Brock Purdy's been exposed a couple times this season, but are they able to really contain Christian McCaffrey, one of the best rushing offenses in the league? Are they able to contain Debo Samuel, who's one of the better wide receivers in the league? Brandon Ayuk. This team is pretty stacked, so I'm going to have to give that one to the 49ers there at home against the Rams. Now, Cowboys, Buccaneers. Now, the Cowboys have been able to beat the Eagles. Buccaneers don't really look too good. This Cowboys team is just so well-rounded. I'm going to say that they beat the Buccaneers at home to go up against the 49ers there in San Francisco for the conference championship. Now, looking at the Chiefs versus the Bills. Again, the Chiefs, really great team. They're a really great team. Well-rounded team defensively and offensively. Same with the Bills. I think this was played earlier in the season. Bills ended up winning, I want to say. I probably should have done more research on that, but I believe the Chiefs did beat the Bills. No, the Bills beat the Chiefs, I want to say. Right? Bills beat the Chiefs, right? Yeah. Bills beat the Chiefs 20-17. I think this is going to be a great shootout, but playoff Mahomes is just something different. So I'm going to give the Chiefs there an upset over the Bills in Buffalo. I'm going to have the Chiefs winning there. Now, Texans going up against Ravens. I think Ravens win this one pretty easily. I think the Texans have not played a team like the Ravens. The Ravens look like unstoppable this season. They've embarrassed top teams in the league. They've embarrassed them. They destroyed the Dolphins. It wasn't even close. It wasn't even close. That's how badly they embarrassed them. Right? Let me just pull up the score for you. They beat the Dolphins 56-19. The week before that, they go against the 49ers on Christmas. Beat them 33-19. They beat the Rams 37-31. They beat the Browns, they didn't beat the Browns. They lost the Browns 33-31. They beat the Lions 38-6. They lost the Steelers 17-10. So they got swept in the series against the Steelers this season. But earlier in the season, they were able to beat the Browns 28-3. I guess I did lie a little bit when saying the Texans haven't played the team like the Rams. They literally did play the first week of the season, and the Ravens won 25-9. But I think the Texans, they've been a little bit more seasoned with more people being able to, they've been able to play against more talent, and their offensive rookies and defensive rookies have been really good. But the Ravens they just look unstoppable. I think you guys get the gist. The Ravens just seem like the team to beat this season. they've put some teams on shirts. They put some teams on posters. So I'm gonna have the Ravens there. Now 49ers, Cowboys, heated playoff rivalry. I think every year they always play against each other. But who wins this? This one's going to be a little bit tough. I think this is going to be a really good matchup. It's going to be at San Francisco, but give me the Niners here. I think that defense is really good. The Cowboys, I think, might be a little bit exhausted against that Packers game. And also, I mean, going against the Buccaneers should be pretty easy, but this 49ers defense, when healthy, they get the bye week. I'm pretty sure they're going to be pretty healthy. When they get going, they get going. So I'd be scared for the Cowboys offense here. So I'm going to have the 49ers here. And then Chiefs, Ravens. This one's gonna be good. This one's gonna be good. Two young quarterbacks going at it, faces of the NFL. This one's gonna be a great matchup here. But give me the Ravens. I think that Ravens offense is really good compared to the Chiefs defense. So I'm gonna have the Ravens here, which causes for a Super Bowl matchup between the 49ers and Ravens. You know, everybody was like, this is, you know, when they played earlier this season, everybody was like, this is going to be a playoff or a Super Bowl, you know, preview. Now, will I say it's going to end up the same way? I wouldn't say that, but I think it's definitely going to be an electric game. 49ers will be looking out for blood. Ravens, you know, Lamar Jackson, when he got drafted, he said he promised the Ravens a Super Bowl. He's going to promise the Ravens a Super Bowl. That's what he said. He said, with his very own words, he said, they're gonna get a Super Bowl out of me. And I think this is the season that the Ravens do it. They actually do it. I think this team is probably the best Ravens team in a while, probably since when they did play the 49ers in the Super Bowl in 2013. Or what, 2013, 2014. I think this Super Bowl is gonna be crazy. I think you know, it's going to be two well-rounded teams going against each other, and just the two best teams in the NFL entirely. But I think this is the best Ravens team that Lamar Jackson has played for, and obviously I wouldn't say that they're as great as the 2013, 2014 Ravens, but, you know, I think Harbaugh has a little bit of a team on his hands here. If they're, I mean, comparatively, I think they have a pretty easy way to the Super Bowl if they're able to get past the Chiefs. Like, they've already embarrassed the Dolphins, and they've embarrassed the Niners already again this season. So going up against the Texans should be nothing. Chiefs, maybe a little bit of a match there, but I think the Ravens just have so much in the bag. The Cowboys are going to be tough. The Rams could possibly give them a run for their money. So, you know, I think it's going to be tough, but give me the Ravens here to win the Super Bowl. I think this is going to be a great game. I know a lot of people are going to come after me, especially since it's going to be in Vegas. And as a former Vegas resident, I know there's a lot of 49ers fans there. So it could be a possible home game for the Niners if they make it to the Super Bowl. But, I mean, this Ravens team just looks so good. Like, I really don't know what else I can say. Like, they just look fantastic. So I'm going to have to give this one to the Ravens. Super Bowl going out to the Ravens. Last season, I was correct on who would make it to the Super Bowl. I had Chiefs, Eagles, and I had Chiefs winning. And the Chiefs did end up winning. So, just saying. Yeah, I think, you know, it's a little bit of a no-brainer to pick the two first seeds. Like, there's nothing really too big. But, I mean, these are the two first seeds for a reason. These are the two best teams in the league. But again, I have the Ravens here winning the Super Bowl. Let me know what you guys think. That'll be it for today's video. You know, I've been ranting on for a long time, but let me know what you guys think. Who you think would make it to the Super Bowl? Give me your Super Bowl predictions down below in the comments. And while you're down there, go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe. That'd be greatly appreciated. And share the video with anybody that you think may want to see it. But again, that'll be all for today's video. Thank you all for watching all the way through, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.